Hello, welcome to Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small.
And I'm Paul Ogden. Mark, I see you got a chair, and I didn't get a chair. I don't much appreciate that. Are you just more important than I am?
No, I own the chairs, and
okay.
if we were on your deck, we'd be using yours.
Well, I don't have a deck, so it'd be a little hard. But
well, that's
my secret undisclosed location on the northwest side.
Oh, yeah. Cops all know where you live.
Yeah, that's true.
And when you get that warrant tonight, you'll know it's all down.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful September 15th, 2012. We're a week away from autumn, but the air kind of has that crisp feel. Reminds me of college and tapping a keg about 8 in the morning before a football game that we never went to because I went to DePaul. We only went to one football game in the season, and that was
the Wabash.
Yeah. Our guest today is Republican candidate for Indiana State House of Representatives in District 96, Karl Scharnberg. Karl, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
Karl, would you tell our audience what your contact information for the campaign is?
Yeah, certainly. We have a campaign website, and I guess that's the primary contact is www.karl with a K 4indiana.com. The Facebook website is exactly the same, facebook.com/Karl4Indiana. And you can also find me on Twitter at Karl4Indiana.
It's actually a numeral, not a number.
That's correct.
Yeah, the number is the numeric value, and the numeral is actually the number.
I say it correctly.
Wow, that DePaul education's paying off.
No, that was elementary school. Western School Corporation. Paul, you're running against two candidates, the incumbent of like 20 years, Democrat Greg Porter, Libertarian Wesley Bishop. In your district, the 96, describe it first of all geographically.
Yeah, it's kind of a sprawling, weird-shaped district, but it starts up at the very northern edge on the northwest side in the Fox Hill neighborhood, runs down through Butler, Tarkington, and part of the southern part of Meridian Kessler, then runs roughly around 51st Street, 52nd Street, all the way out to Emerson Avenue. Then it kind of funnels down along Michigan down to downtown and captures part of the Mapleton Fall Creek, Watson McCord, Meridian Hills, down to Chatham Arch, St. Joseph, Old North Side.
So whoever drew this district up, were they doing a master's degree thesis on gerrymandering?
I think they were trying to make a very fair district for the Democratic candidate.
Okay, then let's go to the demographics of the district. What's the base vote if there is one?
I would say that in the last, if you look at the last two elections, and it kind of shows
that was pre-reconfigured district.
That's correct. We haven't had an election in this district. It'll be interesting to see if that has changed anything. If anything, I think my sense is that it maybe is slightly more Republican, although we'll see. They cut off some of the far eastern end of the district. They've added the Fox Hill neighborhood. So how that all washes out, I don't know. But generally speaking, the last two elections, we've had the Democrat has won with 70 and 75% of the vote. So we got a tall hill.
And when you're talking about a campaign trying to go out and do polling, that's an expensive proposition in itself, isn't it?
That's correct.
And today with cell phones, cell phones have kind of screwed up the whole way people poll. And it's because a lot of people don't have landlines.
Sure, I would be an example of that.
Okay. What are you seeing as your major issues?
Well, I think the major issue, and this is probably not unique to District 96, but anywhere in the country today, it seems like the big issue right now is jobs. It's the economy and jobs. People aren't working, particularly in the black community. It's even higher unemployment rate than in the economy at large. And so that's a huge issue in my district, is unemployment and finding jobs.
And what can you do as a potentially elected state official to do about that?
Well, I think there's a couple things that we can do and we can continue to do. More importantly, I think in the last session, the last couple sessions, we made some pretty good inroads. I think the right to work legislation is going to be something that very much helps to bring new business to Indiana. In fact, it seems that from what I'm hearing is that there are actually businesses that have done have already moved here because of that.
Well, we can get in an argument about that.
We could.
But
we
that's,
could.
That's not.
It's a contentious claim, but there does seem to be some evidence that companies have already moved here, and I think that over time it'll continue to do that. Hopefully, we want to attract new business. The other thing is there was a story just the other day that came out that said that Indiana is one of the more business-friendly states in the entire nation. Those are the sorts of tax policies and regulatory policies that make it attractive for businesses to open and expand here. That's what we want to do.
Okay. And I'm not going to get a counter on anything like that, because that's not the purpose of disagreeing with things that I think are patently wrong. But that's okay. You also said
wrong?
What?
Isn't it patently wrong? I know you have a DePaul education. But...
Well, I mean that's
all right.
We won't go there.
I'm a proponent of patently.
All right.
Myself.
All right. Well, you don't have my vote anymore. Of course, I only
over
heard
patently.
Well, and not going on issues. Where'd you do your undergrad?
I did my undergrad here at Marian College, now Marian University.
Good Catholic institute.
Yeah, and then went to law school at Ave Maria School of Law when it was in Michigan. Now it's down in Naples, Florida.
So you got to go to it when you could ski, and now you could go to it and hit the beach.
Or water skiing. We can ski, just a different skiing, right?
No, that's true. When we were sitting here before the show, you said a second issue, again, it's nationwide, but specific to your district, obviously it's going to apply as education.
Yeah, certainly. Education is a huge issue, particularly for those who have children in the district, or even for people who operate businesses in the district. And when you look at my district, by and large, what we're talking about is IPS. That's the major school system that is throughout my district. There's a little bit of Washington Township in there, but for the most part, it's IPS. And when you look at those types of school districts, I don't think there's anyone who would make the argument that IPS is serving our students well. And I think there are some. I think we really need to focus in on making some reforms. There's a really great discussion that's going on. I don't know if you're familiar with David Harris and the Mind Trust plan that's been kind of talked about. I think when you look at particularly IPS is as an inner city school, it has one of the highest per student expenditures in the entire country or in the entire state. Maybe the top 2 or 3 school districts as far as the money we're spending on education here. And
well, I think the response is going to be to do the devil's advocate. Is that there are more special needs students in IPS that have people with emotional handicap, trying to be politically correct, always forget the term, and mental disabilities.
I think that's probably true. That being said, I mean it's not really even close as far as the dollar amounts that we're spending on children. If you look at particularly with public versus private schools, but even within the public school realm, IPS is really one of the larger consumers of dollars.
Is there a lot more administration too in IPS?
I think that's the problem. Particularly that, and I think that's really what it comes down to is we have a lot of special needs. We have a lot of programs. We have a lot of overhead. We have a ton of administrators. And part of the thing that I think we could do is focus that money more on the classroom, on the teacher, and the students specifically.
My debate coach in college had a theory that the administration of the school is there to keep the lights on, and that education should be left to the people who teach and to the students.
Would that were so.
And and there was somebody, it's like about a month and a half ago, was explaining about a crisis in the school that they were addressing, which is an IPS. They said, well, I addressed it to my vice principals, they addressed it to the deans, they talked to the assistant deans. It's like, okay, when did it go to a teacher? I mean, and I think you have to have people there to keep the lights on. But I also think that if we put more money into computers and teachers, especially computers, it seems to learn.
Well, I'd like to have the principals and the teachers really be the primary recipients of that money and the control. they're the ones who are there. They're the ones with the students. They know what the students need. An administrator they're at the corner of St. Clair in Pennsylvania in the IPS administration doesn't know any of the students.
And that is a very beautiful architectural building.
What a fantastic building that is, isn't it?
One thing about Indiana, maybe this is off topic on this one, because we're going to go to transit next, but it kind of blends with everything. Indiana's pretty low in ranking in the United States on getting return of our federal tax dollars, aren't we?
That's my understanding.
Well, I mean, shouldn't we be, I mean, ideally everybody should be tied. Everybody in every state should be tied. No state should have an advantage of getting
state left behind.
Yeah. No, don't use that phrase. Don't use that phrase. But no state should be drawing more money than other states around it. Ideally, I mean.
But the problem is, you have states that have military installations. You have states like Alaska who are wide open expanses, and they still need infrastructure.
They need infrastructure, but they're making one hell of a lot of money off of the oil industry there, and they're giving citizens a voucher every year, just cash, Paul. So, and then when you look at the military installations, like in the South, they have those military installations there because their senators and U.S. House of Representatives people all were reelected time and time again, and so had committee chairships. So I understand that there are those aspects and those factors, but like, why? I mean, how can we get more federal dollars?
Well, I think a better question is, why would we send our federal dollars, particularly in the realm of education, to Washington first, and then expect them to give it back to us after they've done whatever they do with it?
So we jack a couple of armored cars as they're heading towards.
Well, I think the bigger question is whether education should be funded in any sense of the word from Washington.
Right now, it's only
as opposed to local.
Right now, it's only about 7%, 5 to 7%. Right. But with that 5 to 7% comes strings.
Right. No Child Left Behind.
No Child Left Behind being a major one, which was done by Republicans, by the way.
Right.
Republican president.
It was done by Republicans to the American people, but that's
Democrats
completely agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's
a lot of Democrats supported that, and I agree with Karl. Yeah. Karl's on the right track.
Well, in terms of higher education, we have. I graduated from IU School of Law here, and so did Paul. And I worked at Purdue. Paul went to Ball State. I lived on Bloomington's campus. That's a long story. But are there any things that you would see in terms of funding for the university system? Other than, obviously, Purdue's going to get a lot more money now. But
and that's, I spent 13 years of my undergraduate, so I was doing part-time for quite a long time. Part of that was at Purdue.
So, I was going to say you flunked a lot, or what?
Well, no, I just one class here, 2 classes.
Oh, wait a minute. But see, I did my undergraduate, then lived on college campuses all together for 13 years before I started law school. It's the same thing. When were you at Purdue?
I was up at Purdue. This would have been, probably 1990, 91, somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay. Yeah. So I spent just a little bit up at Purdue, but a lot of IUPUI. So I've seen a lot of the schools, and I think we have some fantastic secondary education schools here, and I've tried a lot of them. But as far as funding, it seems to me that
we're... Hold that thought. I'm sorry. We're at the end of the segment.
Okay.
Give me the signal. We'll be right back.
Someone who makes $20,000 a year, and they go out under my plan, not the current structure. They go out and buy a $5,000 car. Let's say a $10,000 car. Make it even.
Something that
numbers.
runs.
Yeah, something that runs. Easy numbers, right?
Is this a new car or used?
Oh,
wait. We're at the end of the first segment.